What's up, everyone? Welcome to the In Love with Horror podcast. I'm your host, AJ, and join us every Saturday for a love affair with all things horror as we explore the world of horror films, games, and everything in between. Now, I'll be flying solo on today's podcast. Unfortunately, wifey's feeling a little under the weather, but hopefully she'll feel better soon and can return on next week's podcast. But rest assured, we'll still have a great episode, just you and I, y'all. So on today's episode, we'll be covering, of course, the trailers that dropped this week, which with the trailers, y'all, is a pretty short list, but we did get our first look at the first chapter in that new Strangers trilogy. So that was exciting to see. For news, we'll be talking about basically the slow death of physical media. That's going to be a very interesting conversation because Best Buy has confirmed that they will no longer be selling physical DVDs and Blu-rays in store or online starting sometime in 2024. So we'll be exploring that. We'll talk about the bidding war that finally closed out for the Halloween franchise and who got the rights to make the TV series for Halloween. We'll be talking about, of course, some more stuff from New York Comic Con. We'll also be talking about the potential for David Gordon Green coming back for the sequel to Exorcist Believer called The Exorcist Deceiver. And then on today's main topic, we're going to be talking about why Hollywood doesn't focus on original horror anymore. So we got all that more coming up on the In Love with Horror podcast. All right, y'all. And just like we always do with each podcast episode, we'll start with what we watched this week. Now, of course, since it's the spooky season, y'all, since it's October, we've got our 31 Nights of Halloween movie marathon list. So hopefully y'all have been going through the second week theme, which was slashers. We've been watching incredible films this week, all great slasher films. Actually, the film for, of course, Friday the 13th. I'm recording this on Friday the 13th. Y'all, we did watch Friday the 13th, the final chapter. So hopefully y'all had checked that out from our list. And then for Saturday, we're watching The Witches, which is a classic film that I liked always as a kid. Kind of scared the hell out of me when I was a kid too. But for next week, week 3 of October, we'll be watching all black horror films. So we got films like Candyman, People Under the Stairs, Get Out, Ganja and Hess, Tales from the Hood, Blade. And for the family-friendly option, we have The Haunted Mansion from 2003. That film gets a bad rep because I actually really, my wife too, actually really enjoy that film. But that's coming up on week 3. So make sure y'all get our list. It's over on all of our social media channels. Download that list and watch along with us as each day in week 3 of October, we're watching black horror films as the theme for that week. Now, also this week, so I'm recording this on Friday. Yesterday, the Netflix series "The Fall of the House of Usher" released. I started watching that yesterday, y'all, and I'm about 3 episodes deep right now. I plan on, trust me, we'll definitely be finishing it this weekend because so far I'm actually really enjoying this series. I do feel like the horror levels have been dialed back a little bit compared to some of Mike Flanagan's other horror series, but the performances, the drama play, the character arcs, the way they present the story, how it's told, has a story being told. I always like when films or shows, like the current time is someone telling the story and have like the flashbacks. I really like that approach, and it's been working very well so far for the show, for the Fall of House of Usher for me. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. I actually really look forward to finishing it this weekend, and hopefully it continues to stay strong and only get better throughout the rest of it. Because I'm really curious to see how this compares to Mike Flanagan's other series over on Netflix. Of course, this is his final series with Netflix before he moves over to Amazon. So I'm excited to see what the rest of the show has to offer. But if you've been watching it and if you finished it, let us know in the comments what you think, or what's your thoughts on the Fall of House of Usher, and how do you rank it against Mike Flanagan's other Netflix horror series. But that's definitely what I'm watching right now, and we'll continue to watch this weekend, and we'll probably end up doing a review on that as well. So make sure you're locked in, followed, and subscribed on everything: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, because you'll definitely see us talk about it or review it in some sort of capacity. Now, moving on, y'all, we'll jump into new trailers that dropped this week. We're starting off with our first look from season 2 of Interview with the Vampire. The show Interview with the Vampire is based on Anne Rice's iconic novel Interview with the Vampire, which follows Louis' epic story of love, blood, and the perils of immortality, as told to the journalist Daniel Malloy. Chafing at the limitations of life as a black man in 1900s New Orleans, Louis finds it impossible to resist Lestat's offer of the ultimate escape, joining him as his vampire companion. But Louis's intoxicating new powers come with a violent price, and the introduction of Lestat's newest fledgling, the child vampire Claudia, soon sets them on a decades-long path of revenge and atonement. Now, Interview with the Vampire Season 2 is returning to AMC and AMC Plus in 2024. We don't have a locked-in official date yet. Now, unfortunately, Wifey is not on, the podcast, right? For this one to talk to y'all, because she is the fan of this series. I've never watched it personally, but she's seen it. I know she did like the first season. And when they actually were announcing season 2, they had released some first look images or a teaser not too long ago. We did talk about that on one of our previous podcasts. And I know she was liking the look of it so far. As someone who has, no knowledge whatsoever on Interview with the Vampire, I did like this clip. So this first look scene was showing, I guess the group that Luis is rolling with, and they pulled up on this house, and we see one of the vampires, do some sort of a power where they first of all, they stabbed their fingers in the back of this dude's neck, which was dope actually. And then they were able to kind of, run through his mind to see how many people they had in the house. So kind of seeing like how much can we feast on? And then we get this really interesting scene in this clip where now, I do apologize because I'm not familiar with the show, but I believe it's Luis talking to another gentleman, what I'm going to assume is the leader of this convent, or coven, or whatever it's called for vampires. I'm blanking on the name here, but they're having a conversation out near the motorcycles while the rest of the vampires have gone in and started just wreaking havoc and feasting on everybody in this house, right? And there's some really cool like camera shots in there where you're just looking in the background of absolute mayhem going on in the background. Like they are just tearing people out the frame, y'all. Like blood splattering on the windows, doors getting busted open, heads getting chopped off, you name it, it's going on while they're having this casual conversation outside. There's some like flirtatious stuff going on, and they definitely kind of showing that they're interested in each other. And it's honestly like a really cool scene. As someone who doesn't know anything about the show, the clip definitely intrigued me, and I'm like, okay, maybe this show's worth checking out. But again, I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't know what Wifey thinks on this, but at least for me, as someone who has no knowledge of the series, I think it looks pretty good. It kind of got me interested and want to check out the other season. Now, granted, this is an isolated look, so I don't know how everything else plays out. But yeah, it's looking good. Let me know what y'all think about this first look scene from season 2 of Interview with the Vampire. Now, the next trailer that we got this week, unfortunately, we only got like really 2 horror trailers this week. It's kind of a slow week. But the next clip that we got was actually a clip for Chapter 1 of this new Strangers trilogy. So it's called The Strangers Chapter 1. The official clip was called Knock Knock. Now, just some info on The Strangers Chapter 1. It's directed by Rennie Harlan. And this particular clip is starring Madeline Petch. And the description for Chapter 1 reads, a young woman on a road trip with her fiance. But when they stop at a remote vacation rental in the woods, they become the prey of a vicious gang of masked strangers who attack without warning or reason and must use courage and cunning to survive one long, terrifying night. And again, that's coming in 2024. Now, this clip, hearing that there was going to be a remake of The Strangers, and not only that, the fact it's a trilogy, it kind of had me a little concerned because I'm like, okay, is this going to be just kind of like another, cheap throwaway remake that, um, Hollywood, loves to do, and that's going to be kind of part of the things we're talking about in the main topic today. So make sure you stay tuned for the rest of the podcast. But um, I was actually pleasantly surprised with this clip, y'all. This clip had some great tension building. Of course, we see, our lead actress here. There's a knock at the door, and she's, looking through the peephole, and someone keeps asking, is Tamara here? And she's like, "Hey, we already told you like once or twice before, ain't no Tamara here." And she's throughout this sequence, she kind of periodically looks at the peephole, and there's different like, there's a lot of tension that's built with that because you don't know how it's going to play out. You don't know if it's going to be one of those situations where somebody, shoots through the peephole, stabs through the peephole, something like that. I was waiting for something like that to happen. But it definitely had a lot of tension. Like I was actually tense watching the scene because I didn't really know how they were going to go about and play this out. There's one point where she looked through the peephole and there's like a shot, the silhouette of a figure standing there, and then he like covers the camera. And that was really cool. And then, of course, we see someone, walk by in the background. So, of course, with that first Strangers film back in the day, that happened a lot where you would see, antagonists kind of just standing and chilling in the background. And that was part of the creep factor was, they wouldn't like jump scare it. It would just be this lingering, tension. Like you didn't know where someone was going to pop up. And the main character would never see them, but the audience saw them. And they would just added this extra creep level. It was just like, yo, like, this is terrifying, and I don't really know like how this is going to play out. But they're already in the house, so now you're wondering like, when are they going to attack? Like, because they can obviously get to them at any point. But yeah, we saw a quick glimpse of that with someone walking by in front of the camera behind her. But I don't know. I feel like this clip kind of is showing some promise here. Like it is definitely I'm going to say a little bit, make me feel a little bit better about the fact that there's going to be a reboot to The Strangers. That this clip shows some promise. So I still don't know how they're going to turn this into a whole trilogy. I don't know how the hell that's going to work. But it's definitely showing some promise. But let me know what y'all thought about this clip called Knock Knock for The Strangers Chapter 1. Again, coming in 2024. No release date just yet. But we'll definitely keep y'all updated. And also, that was coming out of New York Comic Con, of course. Now, that actually concludes the horror trailers that we got this week. Again, it was a very light week on trailers. But that, it tends to happen. Sometimes we'll get a whole lot like the last podcast. Sometimes we get one or two. You never know what you get when it comes to, the horror genre sometimes. But we'll go ahead and move on to the horror news section of this podcast, y'all, where we'll talk about all the good horror news that dropped this week. Now, we'll start off with this story here. If you buy your physical media from Best Buy, you'll want to hear this news, as Best Buy is phasing out of the physical media business. Now, this story originally came from the Digital Bits, and Variety did an expanded story on it as well. But here are the details, y'all. Best Buy plans to exit the physical media business for good next year, possibly as soon as the end of Q1 of 2024. And this will include in-store and online sales. So they're like completely done with this, y'all. Now, Walmart, Amazon, and Target will now be the main retailers when it comes to physical media, but even Target seems to be scaling back as well. Now, a Best Buy spokesperson said in a statement to Variety, "To state the obvious, the way we watch movies and TV shows is much different today than it was decades ago. Making this change gives us more space and opportunity to bring customers new and innovative tech for them to explore, discover, and enjoy." Now, this is also coming on the eve of, Netflix closing their, DVD by mail service. Not even just a couple weeks ago. They sent out their last DVDs to customers on September 29th, which is, and actually gave customers the option to keep their final disc if they chose to, which I thought was cool. But that was, Netflix closed that portion of their business after 25 years of running the DVD by mail service. Now, honestly, this doesn't really come as a surprise as, the digital age continues to expand. We're seeing it also with the video game industry. More and more people are just buying, games digitally. So we're seeing this effect of digital purchases kind of, permeate throughout all industries. And it's kind of seeming like the film and TV industry are going to, be the first to completely die off, because with Best Buy getting out of the game, I can't imagine that other businesses will be too far behind, especially when you think about sales all continuing to decrease. The article did mention kind of the stark decrease in sales. Like at one point, we're at 1 year recently it was hitting like 1 billion, then it the following year it dropped down to like 700 million. But yeah, 754 million. So it's on a steady decline. So it's going to go away completely eventually. And that's just, you know, in today's age of streaming and even buying the content digitally, like most people just don't want to go to the store and buy stuff. And typically the digital version, if not, on a subscription service, even bought digitally, is a little bit cheaper. Um, but yeah, this is crazy, y'all. The one thing I do wonder about this type of news is, you know, I wonder if physical media would turn into like this, antique collectors type of situation where um, it becomes like a rare thing because they don't make it anymore. It's kind of like VHS, how people have started to like hunt down old VHSs and, actually want to like watch the content or just collect them. I wonder if physical media, like for Blu-rays, it'll kind of turn into that as we steadily get more and more closer to like an all digital, content future. But yeah, y'all, Best Buy, it's crazy, man. Because I remember, being a kid and even as an adult too, going into Best Buy and browsing their physical media section. It seems they had anything on sale or just something that looked interesting. But it's also wild, man, to think about how much things have changed over the decades. Because I remember being a kid and going to places like Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. Hollywood Video was my favorite, y'all. I liked going to Hollywood Video because they also had that like game crazy portion or whatever it was called, where it was all about video games too. But I just remember the time that I would go into these stores, these rental stores, and just look at and just browse the walls of movies and look at the cover art of the box, and be like, oh, what's that? And then go read the back and stuff like that. So it's crazy to think of how much things have changed, and now that idea, that concept of browsing, looking at covers, and then reading is now all digital. Now we scroll through Netflix and look at the thumbnails on Netflix or Hulu or whatever your streaming service of choices, and then we get intrigued by a poster and be like, oh, what's that? And then watch the trailer, and things are still the same. It's just all digital now. But we'll see how long this continues to go on. And I know there's some people out there who really love physical media, and they collect in the event that sometimes a lot of services go down and you can't access your content when servers go down. So you always have your physical media, and a lot of times too, physical disc have better like bit rates and quality than digital. I wonder if and because I don't usually purchase like full purchase. I'll do rentals on digital, but I've never done a full digital purchase. I don't know what the quality comparison of that is to physical Blu-ray, but I am curious if it's not as good as the physical Blu-ray, because typically that is the peak ultimate quality, for the cine and audio files out there. So let me know what y'all's thoughts are on Best Buy officially, shutting down the physical media portion of their business. I do believe they're still selling video games, but the film portion of that is coming to a close. Now, moving on to our next story. The bidding war for Halloween comes to an end. Miramax deal with Trancas to develop and co-produce a Halloween TV series has officially closed. Now, after a heated bidding war, Miramax has scored the television rights to the hugely popular Halloween franchise. The deal with Trancas to develop and co-produce a Halloween TV series also includes a first look agreement on other television projects for the international marketplace. And if you're not familiar with first look, that just means that if Trancas decides to want to create something new within the Halloween franchise, that Miramax would get the first opportunity to bite at it. But moving on, the big thing here, right, is jointly controlling both the film and TV rights would allow Miramax and Trancas to map out an integrated film TV universe. So they now have control of both with Miramax. They got film and TV rights. And so it's possible we could see a whole, film TV universe a la Marvel or something like that, where everything's interconnected, intertwined, because everything has to be a cinematic universe these days. But this is interesting, y'all. I think that a Halloween TV series does have potential. Now, if you weren't familiar, Miramax was battling with A24. I guess they were kind of having a lot of back and forth, and it looks like Miramax beat them out. I'm a little disappointed about that because I think that A24 could have created something very unique in comparison to what Miramax could do. A24 typically has a more, artistic artois type of vibe to them when they create horror content, typically creating things a little bit more original. That's an ode to the main topic we'll be talking about today with Hollywood, and just they don't really make original stuff anymore. But so this we'll see how this plays out. I'm hesitant, but I'm somewhat excited to see what they can do with the TV series for Halloween. This will be very interesting. I'm for sure that this will be, a brand new universe. I'm sure it's going to be like a reboot type situation where they're going to do their own thing. And it kind of has to be, if you remember the end of, Halloween Ends. But I'm curious to see what they'll do. I'm curious to see what time frame they'll work in, how Michael Myers will be established, how that'll work as a TV series. Michael Myers is being a singular, person, the shape, the force, and how that'll convey to a TV series, and what kind of lore and story they'll create with that. I'm curious to see. But this whole universe thing, I don't know. Like, how would a film TV universe for Halloween even work? Like, they'd have to add a lot of extra shit, getting very much so into the supernatural, I think, to do something with that. But yeah, we're getting more Halloween, y'all. And, Halloween's an iconic franchise. We're getting more of it, whether you want it or not. More is coming. So we'll see how that develops. There's not any more details on what is being made or when things will come out. But I'm sure we'll probably not see anything for a couple of years as they begin to, work on and write ideas and stuff like that. Now, moving on to our next story, the VHS franchise continues. Shudder announced at New York Comic Con that another installment will be released in 2024. Now, this next installment will focus on sci-fi horror, and the producer Josh Goldblum stated at New York Comic Con, Jason Voorhees, Leprechaun, Pinhead, Dracula, even the Amityville Horror House ended up in space. So as we move into our own Part 7, it was only natural that we should too. Now, this news, of course, comes on the heels of last week's release of VHS 85, which debuted Friday, October 6th, and it became the most watched exclusive film premiere of 2023 for Shudder and AMC Plus. So VHS 85 did big numbers for Shudder, y'all. And I'm not too surprised that we're getting another VHS. I feel like VHS is the ultimate template to just keep banging out. They can go to the fucking VHS Part 20 because they've completely abandoned the idea of a larger continuous story. Now, that is unfortunate for me personally. I really liked the first two VHS films and how they had this kind of overarching main through line story about the tapes. And if you watch the tapes in certain order, like they have a certain effect on you. Like, the tapes were very much a tangible thing that existed inside of a, VHS world. So they've completely abandoned that so they can just kind of pump these out. Cause now they've just become a collection of, horror short films with no real meaning or connection to them at all. Just a theme and a bunch of short films. And that's fine because sometimes we do get some great short films. With VHS 85, I watched that last weekend and I thought it was all right. There were some shorts in there that I really liked. I really liked Scott Derrickson's short. Also liked I'm not sure who directed it at this time, but the one with the group of people who were on the boat. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but how that story played out, I really liked. And then there were some kind of ones that also like the Techno God one too. That was really cool. I didn't like what I'm going to call the main short film that played out over the course of the film, over the course of VHS 85, which is the whole like alien mimic thing. I don't really like how that story played out. I was not interested at all. Even the conclusion was I mean, the conclusion was cool, but it's also like really dumb. The characters are just really stupid. Um, but VHS 85 was okay. It didn't. I wouldn't say it, put me off from the series or anything like that. I do want to see more VHSs. I think I just want to see them bring back the like having an actual story where the tapes exist inside that story. I want them to bring that back and let's get a main through line story in the film. But you know what? Either way, I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting to get into VHS. Obviously, VHS is doing well for Shudder, and I'm always a huge fan of whatever is going to help Shudder continue to grow, because that's a main, it's a horror focused streaming service. So if they can continue to get more subscribers and get more revenue, and they can, create bigger and better things, I'm all for it. I'm all on board. But I will say the idea that it's going to be all sci-fi horror, I think is really cool. I think we can get some really interesting things. Hopefully, there's nothing too cheesy. I would love to see something in the vein of like an Alien, like that'd be really cool, or like an Event Horizon. That'd be a lot of fun as well. I just want them to get creative with it, get wild. And then, oh man, it would be so cool if they did an actual main through line story. Imagine like, the main story of that film is like this crew who's exploring, maybe they're exploring a planet like, or they answered a call from, this would be cool too, y'all. What if they like answered a call from like deep space? Some transmission came through deep space and NASA got it, and it was these tapes, these series of clips that invokes some sort of like, or it's like a warning of an alien attack, or I don't even know, but I just want something wild like that, right? I want some main through line story where the tapes are kind of within that story, and then we get some sort of wild, crazy conclusion. Like, I think that'll be really cool. The tapes can still be random as hell, as they were with the first two films, but there's still some sort of, story that the tapes actually exist in. But this is exciting, y'all. Let me know in the comments, or online on our social media channels, what y'all think about a new VHS, and what are you looking for the sci-fi horror part? What do you think they could do? And let me know if you agree with me with them bringing back the main through line story for the VHS films. Now, moving on to our next story. Will David Gordon Green return for The Exorcist Deceiver? Of course, Deceiver is the sequel to Believer. Now, The Exorcist Deceiver is dated for a theatrical release on April 18th, 2025. Now, we assume David Gordon Green would return to direct all three movies in this new horror trilogy for The Exorcist, much like he did with the recent Halloween trilogy. But that may not actually end up being the case, y'all. Now, David Gordon Green had an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, where he said, "My intention is just to start making things, and as those plans come together, if I find myself in that." And he's referring to The Exorcist Deceiver, in that director's chair, I'd be thrilled. But right now, I'm navigating it from a story perspective and looking at my realities of life as I pivot. Now, this is very interesting, y'all, because of course, the Exorcist Believer has released. It came out last weekend, and man, review-wise, like critic-wise, and even kind of overall in the wider majority of of the movie-going audience, it did not review well. In fact, let me look up where it's sitting at. On Rotten Tomatoes right now. So, for the critic score for Rotten Tomatoes, it's sitting at 22%. For the audience score, it's actually sitting at 59%, which is not as bad as I thought it would end up. It's kind of surprising to me, actually. It's still low, but not as bad as I thought. But still, I'm sure that is not what Universal wanted to see with this film. So this is interesting. It makes me wonder if Universal had already planned for the potential of someone else directing this franchise. Now, I'm on board for someone else directing. I think The Exorcist Believer was rough, and I think it needs a different director for the sequel, and a different writer. Because to me, the issue with Believer came from both Green and Scott Teams as a combo. Same people that did the shit with like Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, all that dumb shit. We kind of got a taste of that in Believer, and I think it's a recipe for disaster if they bring in another director but continue to have teams on there helping write the story. They need to get in a whole new set of people to kind of revitalize this trilogy because they can bring it back. They got a rocky ass start with Believer, but I'm telling you right now, they can turn this trilogy around and have it start going up instead of continuing to go down. Like the Halloween trilogy did like this. It went down, y'all. The 2018 Halloween was actually decent. Then Kills was awful, and Ends was even more awful. But I do believe that they can turn this new trilogy around. I'm all on board for a different director, different writer. But we'll see. But I did find it interesting that the plan wasn't already for him to direct all of them. I don't know if maybe he changed his mind after the discourse, or he just kind of tired of making these horror franchise requels, essentially. Maybe he wants to do something else, something more original. And that's fine. I think that sometimes Gordon Green's directing can be very visually pleasing at times. And maybe with a different team behind him, a different writer, something more original, he can, kind of expand, right? Kind of expand his wings and do something a little different. Maybe something a little bit more artistic that might allow him to, spread that creative thought and not be locked in and isolated to a narrow thinking for a requel. But let me know what y'all thought about this news and kind of who would you want to come direct the Exorcist Deceiver, and who would you want to come write it? Because we definitely need a good team to come in and turn this franchise around. I don't have any names right now off the top of my head, but maybe this will be something to talk about. Maybe I'll do like a TikTok on it or something, talking about who I think could come and direct it right for the rest of the Exorcist trilogy. But let me know what y'all's thoughts are, because I think this will be a great conversation to have on either YouTube or our social media channels. Now, for our last news topic, of course, we like to talk about the box office news. So we'll go ahead and talk about last weekend. So last weekend, of course, saw the opening of The Exorcist Believer, and also saw the opening of When Evil Lurks. That was a smaller indie film opening, so of course it wasn't a wide release. Now, for The Exorcist Believer, it opened to $26.5 million. And actually, currently, as of today, as of this recording on Friday, October the 13th, it's got $33.9 million domestically and basically $54 million worldwide. Now, last weekend Saw made $7.8 million, y'all. And so it's continuing to grow, sitting at a total of $35.7 domestically and $59.6 million worldwide. So, hey, it's not bad at all. And then we had When Evil Lurks, that, indie film opening, and it got $205,000 for this opening, and is sitting currently at $363.9 $1,000 domestically. So not bad at all for, indie film opening, especially it being in a different language. I believe it's that film is in Spanish. And, a lot of times with American movie going audiences, they're not usually big fans of, dubbed or subtitled films, which is super unfortunate because foreign films are amazing. And I wish it was a little bit different, but that is the case with Western moviegoers. They typically don't like to watch dubbed or sub content. But I think things are getting better with streaming. I think streaming has allowed people to kind of expand their minds and be more open to international films. So hopefully, When Evil Lurks continues to do well. And with that, y'all, that actually concludes the news portion of our podcast. And now we'll dive into the main topic, y'all, which is all about why Hollywood doesn't focus on original horror anymore. Stay tuned. All right, y'all. So, like I said, the main topic we'll be talking about today is all about why Hollywood doesn't focus on original horror anymore. And I thought this would be a good topic to talk about because we've seen, man, we've seen a lot of, requels and remakes and reboots. I mean, even this year, if you think about 2023, right? We got Scream 6, Evil Dead Rise, Insidious the Red Door, Pet Cemetery Bloodline, Saw 10, The Exorcist Believer. It's all of these films that were sequels or requels or remakes. And, it's got me thinking like, you know, Hollywood, man, they just don't really do original horror anymore. And even if you think about this year, we did get a couple of original horror films, but none of them were from Hollywood. Like if you think about Skinamarink, that was an incredible indie film that I actually did like. And even that, that was indie. And then Talk to Me, that was a pretty large, original horror film, but that came from, the brothers from YouTube. I can't recall their name right now, but they made this film on their own, and then then they started shopping for studios. So there was no initial, Hollywood investment. All these major studios are really focused on, doing remakes and reboots and requels and all of that, and it got me wondering, like, why is that? Like, why can't we get original content anymore? And from what I've seen, and just some of the research I was doing, really the biggest proponent of this, and we kind of see this honestly with other industries as well. I'm a big video game fan. We see this with video games too, where the focus has become so much on the bottom line that Hollywood doesn't even want to take the risk anymore on, original horror IPs or original horror ideas. And I actually pulled up I pulled up a list of like the highest grossing horror films, right? And there's a couple of original films that are, within that top 10, where it wasn't like a sequel or a remake or anything. It was an original like idea, sometimes based off a book or something like that, of course. But the number one horror film, box office wise, was a freaking remake, y'all. Like, think about that. The number one grossing horror film was a remake of another horror film, and that's It Chapter 1 from 2017. It Chapter 1 from 2017 made over $700 million at the box office worldwide. And that, for all intents and purposes, was a remake. And you can argue that they just focus on the book, but my point is it had already been done, and it was just kind of funny to think about that fact, and we kind of wonder, like, why can't they focus on original horror anymore? Like, I feel like all we get are, continuations or remakes. I feel like that's all we've been getting, even for the last few years. And a lot of it has to do with the financial aspect. They don't want to take the risk on losing money. But here's the thing, though, right? Here's the thing with that, y'all. The thing I don't understand about that is about the risk of losing money. Because now, granted, it is kind of like a one-off, right? They kind of got lucky with that. They had the right team. That was Andy Muschietti, I believe. And so they had the right team behind them to, be able to pull something like that off. But my thing is, most of the time with horror films, right, the budget on these is already extremely small, right? It's already extremely small. So more than likely they will get their money back. But I think my thing is, as I was sitting here thinking about, why they're not focused on original horror anymore, is they're trying to be cheap, I think, all around. Even when it comes to paying for, writing, performers, and, production, all those things, they're trying to be cheap all the way around. And I think it's easier to just take, pre-existing franchise and throw any writer on it. Hey, just write something. Keep it cheap, and then throw something out, and we'll recoup and profit. But it's weird to me that they just don't take that same concept and do it for original films. But see, I think it costs more to get someone to write something original, and it's more difficult, and and they want the easy way to just make a buck, make money on that bottom line. Take an existing franchise because people know it and people just talk about it on social media. Be like, oh yeah, this is the new Exorcist film. Everybody knows the Exorcist. This is the new film, and we're guaranteed to make at least 30 mil the first weekend. We'll recoup most of our costs, and the rest will just be profit. Now, of course, Exorcist is a different case because Universal spent $400 million on the whole IP. They're trying to get that back across the whole trilogy. But the point still stands that Believer only cost around 30 mil. So I think they already got their money back, at least in regards to that singular film's cost. And so, it got me thinking too. So as horror fans, right, are we part of the problem for Hollywood, not focusing on original horror anymore because we always go to see these requels, remakes, and so on? Because, for all industries, right, the audience that kind of, that those things are being made for, the way that they speak to these companies is with their wallet, right? Like, if Exorcist Believer came out and just made $10 million, for example, let's just say something crazy happened and nobody went to go watch it, and it made $10 million worldwide, I think Universal would greatly reconsider their approach to how they handled this film and then the rest of the trilogy, right? Because you speak with the dollar. Because that's all they know. These Hollywood studios only know money, right? So it got me thinking, like, am I part of the problem, right? Because I wouldn't bought a ticket to Exorcist Believer to see if it was good or not. And I think that's part of the due diligence of a reviewer, to educate people on whether the film is worth paying money to go see or not. But I was like, man, it got me thinking, like, am I part of the reason why they keep making these things? Because if I am contributing to the overall revenue of this film, and I contributed to the Exorcist Believer's current $33.9 million domestic total, and that's enough to please Universal to be and call it a halfway success. You know what I'm saying? Because there's no way that Universal's looking at this shit at a 22% critic score. 59 audience score ain't too crazy. But and then their domestic total, and not having some sort of thought and being like, man, you know what? We could have made way more money, buku money, had we actually invested in better teams to write and direct this thing and actually put forth creative effort in creating something that was, creatively, intellectually inspired. You know what I'm saying? But it's definitely an interesting thought. And I feel like between the financial risk and how much money they can make just off the name alone, it's a big reason why Hollywood is just like, man, fuck it. Like, we ain't getting creative in this. We ain't getting creative in this bitch, man. We're just we're gonna go and get. And what's they're I'm sure they got a team that's over there like digging through, all the old movies. Hey, what's something we can just grab real quick? People I'd be familiar with, and just carry the box office alone on name. We don't give a fuck if it's good or not. I don't, because I'm starting to wonder, like, do these studios even have pride anymore in the quality of the product that they're making? I don't think they do. I really don't. I don't think they care. I don't think these executives at Universal are looking at that critic score and being like, oh man, that's disappointing. They don't give a fuck. I really don't think they care. I don't think those execs at Universal are looking at that and going like, oh, like 22% critic score, 216 reviews from critics, and not being like, damn, like what went wrong here? How can we do better? How can we make something more intriguing, more exciting, just more technically better, a deeper story. And these studios, man, they don't got pride in their work anymore. I think the directors and like those teams may still have some pride. And honestly, I honestly don't even know then. Like, is David Gordon Green looking at that rating and being like, damn, like, how could we have done things differently? I mean, maybe not, as a director, now I don't know how much studio involvement there was with the Exorcist Believer. Sometimes there's a lot of studio interference, But was he happy with the final product even before it released worldwide? I don't know. Um, but I just wish that Hollywood would get back on the original horror film side, take those risks, and create something special. That's actually what I really liked 20th Century Studios back when it was, 20th Century Fox. Like they typically would take some, very, bold or creative or interesting steps in creating original ideas and horror films. We saw that recently with No One Will Save You, that dropped on Hulu from 20th Century Studios, and that was super original. We had never seen anything like that before. And so still throwing it, of course, A24 is the ultimate example, right? Like they make nothing but original shit. That is the place to go for creative, original ideas. And that's actually why I really wanted A24 to get the Halloween franchise TV rights. I knew they would have did something very special with that. We would have got something that I think would have been very creative and very special, very original with the Halloween franchise, and gave it a whole different feel. And I think it could have been, I'm not saying it would have been 100% like for sure good, but it would have been very interesting, I think. And so I'm starting to wonder too, like imagine if A24 got The Exorcist, Believer. We could have something very special with that too. But yeah, but the bigger studios aren't doing the original stuff anymore. Even take Insidious the Red Door. That movie was terrible. And that was just another sequel, like them trying to, go back. I thought it was cool that they came back to it. Don't get me wrong. But they're not taking the time and due diligence to create, to get good writing teams on these things to, produce good stories. I actually did not watch Scream 6 yet, but Evil Dead Rise, I thought was actually really good. That was really well done. For it to be, it was kind of in the vein of like a requel, sort of, not really, but because they didn't revisit the same. It wasn't like the 2013 Evil Dead, but that was like a legit remake. Now, granted, that was actually done with respect and care. That movie's actually really good. So, I'm talking about, while Hollywood doesn't focus on original horror anymore, but there are times when remakes have come out and been really well done. And I think The Evil Dead is a great case of that. You know what? And even The Thing from 1982, I don't know if you knew this, but that was a remake too from a film called The Thing from Another World from 1951. And shit, we all loved The Thing from 1982. That's a fucking classic. We love that film. So it's not to say that Hollywood can't make good requels and remakes. Even 2018 Halloween was okay. It was good, But most of the time they're treating it as throwaway and not putting like their best foot forward financially to give us something worthwhile. It's just and it's kind of disappointing. And I would love to see Hollywood, take more risk in creating original ideas. The shit gonna be cheap anyway. You know what I mean? It's gonna be cheap anyway. You'll probably make your money back. But just taking that time to even, give people the opportunity to create and do unique things with horror, and don't leave it to just, the indie films to do that. I feel like, David F. Sandberg's Lights Out was a great example of a big studio giving an indie director the opportunity to do something on the big stage. And that was just off of a short film, and he killed it. It was amazing. It's like, that's what you can do when a big studio gets behind original horror ideas. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I don't want to harp on this too much. I just kind of wanted to come on, and especially since I was just doing a solo show, I want to do a smaller topic and just kind of give my thoughts on, why Hollywood isn't focusing on original horror anymore. It's all about money. And sometimes I question if I'm part of the problem by, giving them money for these awful or requels like The Exorcist, Believer. And I kind of wonder where that line is, like where us as horror fans, take that stand to be like, okay, we're not going to go see this because we're not going to keep supporting them not making original content. But we got to be damn sure that when original content does come out, that we show support. I said it on the last podcast with No One Will Save, I think, or a podcast 2 ago, where I said, hey, make sure y'all go watch No One Will Save You on Hulu. Get the numbers up so they understand that we want original ideas. Recently, It Lives Inside, where it was kind of a, Indian culture based horror film, something that we had never seen, at least Western side, right? Hey, go and see and support that and see that film. So these studios understand that we want to see original content. Talk to Me was huge. That film did numbers, it reviewed well. And I think that showed a lot of people, hey, people want to see original ideas. And if their ideas are well produced, well funded, they're good ideas, people will come to the theater, they'll spend that money and they'll go watch these films. Right? Take some risks sometimes and you'll have big wins. But all they care about is the bottom line. Super unfortunate. The Exorcist Believers, the most recent casualties, Pet Sematary Bloodlines. I haven't watched that yet, but I know it's not doing well critically either. Or another throwaway, this one is kind of like a prequel, but another throwaway, prequel remake type of film. But yeah, we'll see how the industry shakes up. Of course, we'll still have the indie scene where we get all the unique stuff, but imagine when a big studio, if a big studio would back these people who are creating these original ideas, we can get very special things more regularly, and honestly, they make way more money. But let me know what y'all's thoughts are on some of the things I was talking about. For one, how do we navigate that landscape of, like, where do you draw that line of going to show support for these remakes, or talking with the dollar and being like, hey, we don't want these anymore. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And then what are your thoughts overall on remakes, reboots, prequels, all those things? Like, do you think we're getting too much? Maybe you're different. Maybe you love seeing all these franchises getting these sequels and remakes that are coming back, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you're loving it. Maybe you're a little bit different on that, but let me know all of your thoughts on this main topic of why Hollywood doesn't focus on original horror anymore, and let me know what your reasoning is and why they don't focus on it anymore. I think it's mainly just financial reason, but let me know what you think. But that'll do it for this podcast today, y'all. This is a shorter one because I'm doing it solo. Hopefully the wifey will come back on the next podcast. Hope she's feeling a little bit better. But I still have fun on this, y'all. Hopefully y'all enjoyed just hearing me talk for a little bit here. And hopefully you enjoyed all the news topics, all the two trailers, the two trailers we talked about, and of course the main topic that we talked about. Let me know, what stories and trailers interested you on this podcast. Drop all that in the comments or over on our social media channels. I do want to remind you that, of course, we are doing, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, the 31 Nights of Halloween movie marathon. That list you can find on any of our social media channels. Again, for starting on Sunday, and Sunday is October the 15th. That's when our week 3 theme starts. And it's going to be all black, all about black horror films, y'all. And it's going to be a great week. So make sure you download that list so you can watch it along with us each day during the week. And then, of course, week 4, we're going to be doing paranormal films too. So that'll be a really fun week as well. Just a reminder to make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTubes. Make sure you follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, on TikTok, on IG. Of course, we post a lot of content across all those things. Make sure you're following us so you can stay locked in and stay in tune to what we got going on. And leave us a rating on Spotify and Apple if you can. That does help boost visibility, and any support you can show for us on there would be greatly appreciated. But if you listen to all the way to this part of the podcast, you made it this far, thanks so much for tuning into the entire podcast. We here at In Love with Horror really appreciate you. It's been an amazing journey. We're seeing a lot of followers and viewers increasing, and we're loving the support that we're getting. Make sure y'all just sharing our content, putting it out there as we continue to grow and try to expand the type of content that we're doing. But I just want to let you know that if you listen to this right now, that I do appreciate you as a listener, and I appreciate you being a part of this horror community, and having these discussions and dialogue with y'all. And that it's in our name, like In Love with Horror. We love horror, and we love this community. But again, thank y'all for listening and your support, and we will see y'all on the next podcast. This has been In Love with Horror. Peace.